Waiters, what Valentine Day disasters have you witnessed? I saw a couple have a full-blown argument in the middle of the restaurant. The woman stood up, took her ring off, threw it at him and walked out. The man continued his meal, had dessert and then paid the bill, left a pretty big tip for the inconvenience and left. 2 failed marriage proposals on the same Valentine's Day. The first one simply said, "No, I can't do this," and walked out. The second one stared like a deer frozen in the headlights for an excruciating 30 seconds before muttering, "Let's talk about this later." They stayed for the rest of their 6-course V-Day special dinner, eating and making painful small talk. Not really a disaster, but this guy came in and said he was waiting for his date. He stayed for 5 hours waiting and she never showed. He eventually ordered for himself and asked that I remove the other glass of water from the table. He said it was their first date. A 16-year-old boy proposed to a 15-year-old girl with a cheap ring in the whipped cream of her dessert. She said yes. Saw a couple have a full-on argument at a restaurant. I wasn't their server, but the table was directly in the center of the restaurant and they were certainly loud enough for everyone to hear. My manager kindly asked them to leave and the guy's response was to yell, "I've been wanting to do that shit for 2 years now," and stormed out. It was like a movie. I was bartending at an Italian restaurant, not a fancy one, but still, and it's pretty much full of Valentine's dates. A guy walks in and sits at the bar by himself, looking pretty down. He asked for a whiskey, so I poured it, told him it was on the house because he looked like he needed it. He proceeds to tell me his story. And #X200B. He had come to the city to surprise his girlfriend for Valentine's, about a 5-hour bus trip between cities, and he sure surprised her. She was in her dorm room fucking one of his friends from high school. He didn't know what to do, so he just walked into the first place that sold alcohol. I spilled as much whiskey as he wanted and watched the Raptors with him. Never saw him again. It's cliché, but it happened. Someone showing up for a date and you both realize about 30 minutes and she ain't coming. Drinks on me, buddy. Back when I served food at one of those super touristy seafood restaurants, I worked a Valentine's Day double shift. For lunch, this younger couple came in celebrating their 1-year anniversary. I offer my congratulations and proceed to do my usual spiel before taking orders. The girl is looking more and more dismayed the longer I talk. Finally I get to the end and ask if there are any allergies. She looks directly at her boyfriend and states, "Yes, I'm allergic to fish and shellfish." Then looks over at me very sad. I made sure every aspect of her meal was fine for her. But it was that look of, "We've been dating a year and he still takes me to a restaurant that could kill me," that really did it for me. Happened to my poor coworker. A guy and his date came in for Valentine's Day. They had a great time, ate a lot of food, drank a lot of wine, and got along really well with my coworker who was their server. About 2 months later they come back in and request my coworker again, who happily says yes to serving them. He goes up and greets them, the guy introduces his wife to him, and my coworker mentions something about how much he enjoyed serving them on Valentine's Day. They go quiet. Wife gets up and leaves, guy just lowers his head. Turns out he had brought his mistress in on Valentine's Day, but my coworker didn't realize he was with a different woman this time around, so didn't think anything of it. We never saw the guy again. Not really much of a disaster, but last year my work called me up, "Hey buddy, we know you're single, can you come in as an extra shift tonight?" He proposed, she said no. He cried and tried to change her mind for 20 minutes while she sat there stony-faced. She finally got up and walked out. He paid and left in tears. Bus boy on Las Vegas Strip. An attempted proposal. Dude tries to set up sign with GF's friends for her to show up and see the ring near a fountain. Duck stole the ring, they found it 2 hours later as he dropped in the fountain. She still said yes. Free drinks were given. Younger couple came in for what I can only assume was a first date. Ordered a pizza but never ate, caught up in conversation I guess. Guy must have been feeling confident BC about 2 hours and he gets up, goes to the bathroom, and then decides to sit next to her in the booth rather than across from her where he was before. I swear to you she then got up and used the restroom about 10 minutes later, and when she came back, decided it would best if they didn't sit next to each other and sat in his original place. Please refrain from doing this. Not my table, but back in my Olive Garden days, we had a man who looked to be in his mid-20s tap his empty wine glass with a fork to call for attention of the surrounding strangers, then get down on one knee with silver band in hand, and ask his girlfriend/date to accept this promise ring. She looked horrified start to finish. But I'll find out Friday cause I work a fucking double, and it's Applebee's. Update. Sorry Reddit, I've been working a shit ton and haven't had a minute to update you guys. So basically, Valentine's Day at Applebee's wasn't much different than any other Friday night working there. But I will say, a lot of people were stingy as fuck with their tips. And I mean a lot of people. Also, there was a couple who dined and dashed, and there was a dude who got stood up. Other than that, it was about as trashy as normal. Happy belated Valentine's Day everybody, back to work I go. A guy proposed to his girlfriend and she said, no. The guy threw his arms up and ran out of the building. Later, while waiting for someone to pick her up, she told us it was completely out of the blue, because they'd only been dating for a few months. Another V-Day, a guy raised a huge fuss over the fact that we wouldn't serve liquor to his underage girlfriend. I worked at a pretty high-end Mediterranean bistro, my second Valentine's there. It was probably the busiest night I've ever worked as a server. We had reservations that booked basically the entire restaurant including the bar and patio from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. No walk-ins were to be seated unless a reservation was cancelled, or someone with a reservation didn't show up. Most of the customers were pretty understanding and either waited or simply left. One dude however kept pushing and pushing, asking every 10 minutes how much longer until he is seated, constantly saying how he is a regular customer, and how his date is going to be there at 7, he got there at 6. We insisted that once a table was available, and all the customers before him were seated, he would get a table, but because the amount of reservations we couldn't guarantee he would even get a table at all. At about 6:50 the guy loses it, fast walks up to the hostess stand where the reservation book is, grabs the reservation book and practically runs out the front door. Now everything is going to complete shit because the only copy of the reservations for the night that is barely half over is gone. Two of the owners ran outside to follow the guy and try and get the book back, but by the time they got out he had already left the parking lot. Even better is, 2 hours later, chaos is still running rampant and the dude shows back up saying he has a reservation for 2. 3 of the 5 of the owners, all brothers, escorted the dude and his date out to the parking lot and banned him from the restaurant permanently. They even took a picture of him and posted it in the window saying, "Do not serve this man." TLDR. Salty dude without reservation steals reservation book and then tries to come back later. A couple sitting at the bar were enjoying their night out. The man got up from his bar stool and left for the bathroom. As his girlfriend was alone, and absolutely wasted, at the bar, a random woman approached and revealed that she recently matched with the woman's boyfriend on Tinder and had hooked up a week earlier. The drunk girlfriend refused to believe this story, so the woman showed her his Tinder profile and their conversation. The boyfriend returned to a drunk, sobbing and screaming girlfriend. I felt like I was watching a reality TV show, it was incredible. The poor girl was basically carried out of the bar by her boyfriend of 3 years whom she just discovered has been cheating on her for who knows how long. It was the most dramatic moment I have ever experienced and it was absolutely none of my business. I was working for a higher-end chain steakhouse in the northwest corner of Greater Los Angeles, in the Valley. Valentine's is obviously one of the top 5 busiest days of the year for us. We did about 500 covers between 5 and 10 p.m. It's also a restaurant with a very open concept floor plan. Booths along the 4 walls of the restaurant and an array of tables in the middle with no partitions or anything between them. A younger couple, maybe mid-20s, dressed to the nines came in shortly after we opened and were seated in a table basically in the dead center of the dining room. They were very friendly and pleasant and I could tell that for them, dining at our restaurant was a really special treat, so I did everything in my power to make it special for them. When they're done, probably around 7, I brought their check which was around $300. When I came back to pick it up the guy had a super embarrassed look on his face and he said he thinks he left his wallet in the car and the woman, who is embarrassed for him, doesn't have anything with her because her dress had no pockets and she didn't bring a purse. So he goes out and 5 minutes later comes back in looking pale as a ghost. He has left his wallet at home and asks if he can call back later with payment info. My GM won't let this fly because there's no collateral of any sort he can leave, so the guy has to drive home to Burbank to get his wallet while the woman waits, with her hair done and her red lipstick and her pretty dress, in the middle of the dining room on Valentine's Day. Now, on the best day with no traffic, never happens, it's at least 40 minutes each way from our restaurant to Burbank. She was there for almost 2 hours waiting for this guy. We were all so embarrassed for her that the staff kept discreetly slipping her drinks and little amuse-bouche bites from the kitchen. It was one of the most awkward things I've ever seen in a restaurant. When he finally got back he was super apologetic to us and to her, he paid the check and tipped like 30% and they left. It was pretty obvious it was an honest mistake, but I still think about that couple from time to time and wonder how things worked out for them. Posting this from my phone, so apologies for any typos or formatting problems. Old man proposed to old woman. He tried to get off the chair to kneel, tripped and fell and I assume broke something since he couldn't get back up and we had to call an ambulance. My manager had to drive her teeth to the hospital separately because she had taken them out to eat her soup, Lord knows why, and left them on the table in the confusion. Edited to add, I don't know if she said yes, my manager didn't get to see them at the hospital, only pass on her teeth to the nurse. Thank you kindly for the gold and silver though. In college I waited tables and Valentine's Day was always a good one in terms of tips. I once saw a couple come in to eat, halfway through the dinner the man's wife shows up to surprise the couple. The wife took the wine bottle and poured the remnants on the husband's head, took off her ring and told the girlfriend she could have him. He tipped me a $100. I worked at a sports bar. Every couple there on Valentine's Day was a divorce waiting to happen. A guy did a backflip and asked a girl to be his Valentine, she declined. I walked up to him and asked if he was fine, he said it took him a week to perfect. I was the disaster. I was a new server. And horrible. I dumped an entire tray on the floor. My bad. Nothing too scandalous, but I'd say, Happy Valentine's Day, pretty much to any couple that sat at my tables. Occasionally one of them would say something like, we're not dating. Some of the times, the other person would give a look that pretty much confirmed that they both had very different interpretations of what was going on. There's an episode of 30 Rock where they mention that going to IKEA is a big stress test in relationships. That has nothing on going to a restaurant on the busiest days of the year, particularly Mother's Day, and Valentine's, especially when it's on a weekend. I'd say 99% of the disasters I've seen have just been normal run-of-the-mill issues where couples realize they have different levels of patience, and one person undoubtedly gets aggravated with the packed restaurant, and their time is ruined. I set my hair on fire and spilled a full Stella on a lady. I work in a causal fine dining steak house. Luckily for me, the lady I spilled the Stella on was super understanding and her husband said from across the table, well now she has to take her pants off. So that could have gone worse for me. There was a note in our reservations that it was an engagement, they wanted champagne, a specific seat, bunch of other stuff. The server comes up to the table with something like, so I read we're celebrating an engagement, congratulations. Confusion from the woman, glaring from the guy. He hadn't proposed yet. She ruined it. Couples who are close to the spring breakup trying to save everything on one meaningless holiday dinner. You see at least one every year. I was eating in a fine dining establishment, Chili's, several years ago. In the next booth was a really young guy who had a big bunch of roses on the seat next to him. He kept looking at his watch, looking at the roses, and popping open a ring box for a peek at the ring. He did this for a half hour or so, then began calling and texting someone, presumably his girlfriend, over and over. As we were waiting for our check, he hands my wife the roses, mumbled something, and walked out. Poor guy. I waited on one of the owners of the restaurant I was working at with his girlfriend and her tween kids, kinda weird, but probably didn't get a babysitter. He had been dating this woman for a number of months, but it was his first Valentine's Day on a date that wasn't his wife in decades. I don't think he was ready, but he was there to support the business. He broke down crying during dinner and it was heartbreaking. They left early. I had a Section 1V day that had a marriage proposal, a 40th anniversary, and a breakup all at the same time. The breakup was the worst. The guy brought his high-class date a gift, a mini ceramic bear holding balloons. He presented it when I was at the table and she looked at it like it was a hot turd. I just knew this was not going to end well. She left at the end of the meal and must have said something because he stayed at the table for another 40 minutes, head down and crying. I felt bad, he saw the celebrations going on at the other tables. I made a reservation last week. Spiel which ended up making him look bad when I responded with, we've been booked for 3 months. I don't think it was as bad as my Easter brunch story. Woman calls us a week before Easter wanting to confirm her reservation for the patio. We are in a hotel and open up our ballrooms for the big holidays and do everything in rounds. I told her we didn't allow for anything outdoors because of that reason. She responded with, well your manager said we could and it's 15 people. So I asked her which one, of course no name, and finally say, do you mean Mia? Who was the director of FNB? She says, yes. Of course. So I hand the phone to her and she shuts it down real fast. The woman throws a huge fit, gives us some sob story as to why she needs the reservation, and we still tell her we will call her if we have cancellations. The woman still shows up the day of, says it's confirmed, we try to squeeze her in but her 15 is now 25. We make room because we had a cancellation but because everything is sat in round she only has an hour to get in and out. Half her party isn't there and we ended up having to kick them out before everyone could eat. She was livid but we explained that because she had no reservation we don't owe anything to her. This is a $50 per person brunch with bottomless mimosas and fucking king crab legs. It's not a cheap experience. She walks out without tipping. It was a disaster. Not wait staff, but I used to work front desk at a hotel. One Valentine's Day I was working the night shift, and this woman comes down with a cut above her eye looking like she just went a few rounds in the ring with a boxer. Woman starts sobbing and asks us to call the coos, which we do immediately. Turns out this girl's boyfriend just beat the shit out of her during a fight, and from what I could tell this probably wasn't the first time. So after the cops show up and haul the dude off, my manager offers her a different room on comp as we need to leave the guy's stuff where it is for him to pick up the next day. She accepts, and I go up with the woman to help her collect her stuff and move to the new room. There were a bunch of bottles of alcohol in the room, and she donated them to the front desk staff. I got a bottle of Hypnotic, and some vodka. Manager got a bottle of Patron. Cherry on top of everything, the dude's wife called later that night saying someone had stolen his card as he was out of town on a business trip. Never one to defend an abuser, I told her where she could find her husband. Fun times. Worked at this Japanese restaurant and had one guy comes and orders a bunch of sushi to go, says he's going to surprise his girlfriend. He comes back like 30 minutes later and asks us if he could return some of the sushi. Apparently his girlfriend has a seafood allergy and couldn't eat anything he ordered, and she was mad he spent so much money, so she made him come and try to get some of it back. Obviously we couldn't really give him a refund on the food, but we made him a chicken hibachi on the house so he could have something to take back to her because we felt bad for the guy. Had a couple sign divorce papers and cry a bunch. Not my story, but a coworker, which happens to be my cousin, told me this story. One day a guy enters the taco restaurant where we worked at. He was a waiter, so he goes on to bring the menu to the table. The guy, 20-ish, says he's waiting for someone, so he's gonna wait to order a full meal, but as waiters we are taught to insist a little more and sell something. So the guy finally orders the cheapest item on the menu, a small carne asada taco, just one. A few hours went by, the dude's date still hadn't arrived, and every 20 or so minutes he would order another one of those small tacos. Eventually the owner of the place, who is a really cool dude and has been a friend of my family for years, tells the waiters, "Look at this poor sucker, if the girl never arrives, I'll pay for everything he has ordered myself." So another hour and a half goes by and this dude finally gives up and asks for the check. He looked pretty sad, so as a waiter of his age, my cousin told him everything he consumed was on the house. He smiled and left good tips anyway. Stay strong guys, or gals, if she/he has you waiting that long, she/he's probably not worth it anyways. Somewhat related, I'm an RN and previously worked in a jail. We offered free STD testing and treatment. Had one guy get the news that he was positive for gonorrhea and chlamydia on Valentine's. How's that for a V-Day? Fortunately he had a good sense of humor about it. For the unaware, these are both fairly treatable diseases. These two were on a date and the guy went to go use the bathroom, the girl just up and leaves after he went to the restroom. When the guy came back he sat around for a while until asking his waitress where she went. She replied with saying that she left. The guy then asked the waitress if she would go on a date with him. The waitress said no. I blew my car's tire and my friend came in to bail me out. We're both straight dudes and forgot it was Valentine's. Decided to have dinner and both were coming from important meetings so had suits on. We didn't catch on until the end on how the entire wait staff thought we were just the cutest gay couple. When do the waiters/waitresses have their Valentine's night out? A few years ago, I had finished my shift at a pub I was working at, and sat at the bar with a drink. There were still a few couples sat in the restaurant, but the boss let me clock off early. I had a pint before leaving, and at a table nearby, it sounded like a proposal was about to happen. A few people went quiet listening in. Then, it happened. Guy, Hannah, will you marry me? He was kneeled in front of his girlfriend, her sat down. Girl, Hannah? Who the is Hannah? She yelled, threw her drink at him and walked out. Guy paid and walked out, looking very red. Just wait till Saturday and this question again. The comments will be even more gold. Not a waiter, but in my strip club bouncer days we had one of our regulars get suited up and bring flowers in one V-Day to try and woo one of the dancers. It did not work. Pro tip, if every time y'all hang out it involves you giving her money, she is not into you. It was my first week serving and I was trying to do everything by the books. This normal seeming couple is satisfied throughout the meal. I ask if the check would be together or separate, big mistake. I figured it would be together and go to the gentleman, but not wanting to assume I asked. They say together, NBD. I go get the check and drop it off. Come back and she's writing a paragraph about how I shouldn't have asked. I grab my manager and she stops by the table and crazy lady complains. They leave, the gentleman tips me well and seems embarrassed at the situation. Crazy lady fills out our survey complaining and calls the store 3 times after to complain. I brushed it off because she obviously had insecurity issues, but damn, what a wild ride. I waited tables at a Mexican restaurant while I was in college. A couple sitting at a table not in my section, the guy gets down on one knee and proposes with an unopened black box. The girl said, "Can I see the ring first?" He opened the box and she hesitated and then said, "Okay." A couple I was waiting on could not stop talking about it. They were both mortified for the guy. Then we all kind of wondered if they would actually get married or how long the marriage would last. Not mine, but my sister's. One night at Applebee's, a lovely couple came in and ordered a few drinks at the bar. They were a really cute couple and tipped well. They came back every Friday and always tipped well. The day before Valentine's Day, the man came in alone and said he was going to propose tomorrow to his girlfriend. It was a very large ring. Easily $10,000. When he came back the next day, the girlfriend appeared distracted and the man was oblivious. When he went to propose, she declined and said that she was having an affair. He looked so heartbroken and just instantly dead inside. The rest of the night, the entire restaurant was kinda silent. When they left, I didn't expect him to come back. Found out a week later that he committed suicide outside her house so that she would see what she had done to him. I served at a Japanese hibachi restaurant and once had a couple come and the dude dumps her after the meal. She then gets up and throws up a trail probably a good 20 feet as she runs to the bathroom. The dude got up and left the girl and I was left to clean the mess. Ex-barista here, hope that is close enough. Some guy on Valentine's Day came in and asked us to write on the cup, "Will you marry me?" It did not go well. She looked at the cup while he went down on one knee. She said nothing, put the cup back down and just walked away shaking her head. He, on the other hand, got pissed and started to rant about how she should have gotten over him sleeping with her sister already. We had to ask him to leave. My mate broke up with his girlfriend to marry someone else. That was a yikes. Also thought the breakup dinner was gonna be the engagement because it was coming close to their 5-year anniversary. He was a dick. I know I'm late, but while working at a sushi bar in college I witnessed a blind Valentine's Day date where the guy who showed up was already the girl's ex-boyfriend. My then partner, a chef, decided to cook me a romantic dinner. Long story short, the night ended with me in hospital because we set my hand on fire. First and only time in 10 years that we celebrated V-Day. Mid-1980s, a couple enjoyed a meal at a two-top that I waited on. All was well, but midway through dinner the area began to smell like someone farted. It did not go away. The man complained, and I apologized, noting that it wasn't the restaurant and there was little I could do. The woman tried to calm the man down, but he asked for the check early, demanded a discount, which we gave him, and stiffed me on the tip. They left. The woman left a skid mark of shit on her chair. Not waiter, but the couple next to my fiancé, and I started ordering only to realize it was an expensive prefixed menu. They had planned to order off the normal menu and split the meal. The waitstaff was pissed. It was rough. Oh, man. Back in the day I was a waitress at Waffle House. We had, I kid you not, Valentine's Day reservations. It was unbelievable how many people chose to partake in this. Anyway, my 7 o'clock table comes in, and it's a couple maybe in their 60s. His wife sits at the table in a huff, with the most miserable scowl on her face, and says loud enough for all of the other tables to hear, "I can't fucking believe you brought me to a goddamn Waffle House for a steak dinner on Valentine's Day." She proceeded to be the most bitter and rude customer I've served, and I felt so badly for her husband. He just thought it'd be cute. Valentine's Day is just another day, folks. Don't make your significant other feel pressured to make grand gestures. Each day with them should be the real gift. I was waiting on a couple in their early 40s on Valentine's Day in an Irish pub. The dude was head to ankles camo and rude. She was decently dressed for a date at the pub and very pleasant. She thanked me for working on Valentine's Day and said I probably have someone I'd rather be with, and he said, "PFFF. She's too skinny, who would want her?" I only spoke to her for the rest of the meal. Was the chef at a pretty fancy place. We did 4-course tasting prix-fixe, and were always booked to the brim for Valentine's. The owner was out of town and the place was packed during our first seating when the pipes to the apartment above the restaurant burst. Nasty, cold water rained on everyone and everything. Fire department came. Owner said to give everyone champagne, clean the place up and keep going. As if anyone wanted to continue their meal soaked through on a cold-ass night in sealing water. My mom divorced my dad on Valentine's Day. My friend and her husband would fake a proposal every year on Valentine's Day for free food. Turns out one of the people working that day also worked last Valentine's Day. She shut down the shenanigans and they got kicked out. And hashtag X200B. They moved to a new restaurant and continued the tradition the next year. Many years ago Valentine's Day fell on a Friday. I was working a double that day, expecting it to be decently busy for lunch and dinner. During my lunch shift, a couple comprised of a much older guy and a much younger woman came in. They were average, completely unremarkable other than the age gap. The disaster came at dinner time. I was in a different section at night, when I got sat with a party of 4. Looked like a family. Mom, Dad, 2 early teenage kids. As I walked over, the father looked kinda familiar. Like maybe I had served him recently, like, maybe at lunch. With a much younger woman. He looked slightly worried as he recognized me as well, and it turned into terror when I mentioned my name and he realized I served him, and his side piece, at that same location maybe 6 hours prior. I simply raised a lone eyebrow at him as I took their drink order. I wish this was truly a disaster and I can say that I blew up his spot, but honestly I didn't want to be responsible for fucking up his kids' lives. He did tip me very, very generously when his second meal was finished. Worked at a chain barbecue restaurant, was a line cook but could see in the dining room. Had a lady and her kids, early teens, come in turn to be seated. She started to freak out, crying, yelling and left. Turns out the table in the corner was her husband and another lady in a date. This couple was double dating, and waiting for the other couple. We were running 1-pound lobster tail special, and we ran out. The wife went apeshit on me, furious about the whole situation. Their friends wind up bailing on them, and the wife gets more angry. Husband takes my GM to the side to apologize for her and they decide to leave and gives my GM $40 to give to me. I was hosting at a really busy brunch place and Valentine's Day was one of our busiest days. We had a full waitlist with tons of people in the lobby when this dude walks on with this huge teddy bear and a bouquet of roses. He said he wanted to drop them off for my coworker, so I let her know he was there, but understandably she was running around, so it took a bit. While waiting, a bunch of folks waiting for tables complimented him on how sweet he was to do that for his girlfriend and how jealous they were. It was kind of cute. When my coworker finally was able to come up front, there was a lot of awe and such. Again, we were slammed, so she ran back after taking the items and it was back to work for all of us. When it died down, I asked her how long she was dating her boyfriend for and she replied, "He's not my boyfriend. He was the salesman where I just bought my car and I think he got my workplace from the paperwork." That was pretty fucking disturbing. I was a delivery driver for a fruit bouquet company and I had 2 arrangements from the same guy. Routes were made for me and the truck was loaded, so there was no way I could mess this up. Delivered both arrangements to the appropriate address. I headed back to the store to find the store owner and the guy who sent these in an argument. This idiot put the wrong name to the houses. And it was on the card with the arrangement. Along with the phone numbers. So both women called each other and then called the guy. He tried to say it was my fault. Then the person who took the order. He ordered it online. All we did was import the order. I hate Valentine's Day because of that place, but man was that great. I was a bartender who saw a guy get called out for staring at my cleavage multiple times in one night. He was the DD and she was an angry drunk. Worked at a high-end restaurant in Podunk, Louisiana. This was the spot for LSU alumni and etc. We have a Valentine's Day private party after closing hours. I am bussing the room around 1 a.m. and rich people are throwing down dozens of wine glasses, bottles, food, etc. Well, this one lady was fucked up to the gills and thought it would be smart to pull a tablecloth off a table to look for her, insert drunken mutter. Before I could stop her, she rips it off, it hits the ground, and glass and shit flies everywhere. She gets on her hands and knees and started frantically looking for her phone she lost in the process while wearing a little white dress. I looked on in horror and amazement. We immediately rounded her up and ended the party. Oh, a couple of proposals that didn't work out. Come to think of it. I had 2 no's in my section and 0 yes. Small sample, of course, but I think that proposing at a restaurant is just not that good of an idea. Worked at a fine dining establishments in the city. Valentine's Day is usually booked solid. That day was -25°C out and for some reason our heating didn't work. The whole floor, some 80-odd people, and as far as I know 100+ upstairs too, were dining in their winter jackets. We had to close the main doors to keep the heat in. It was a brutal night to be serving. People were cordial despite their disappointment. After reading all of these comments, I'm just happy my girl said yes before I could even finish asking. Wasn't Valentine's Day, but maybe a second or third date. I had a woman waiting for over 30 minutes in my section and she kept saying that her date, would be there soon. She orders a drink and seems fine with waiting, so I leave her to her drink until he gets there. I was bullshitting with coworkers in the back and told them about this woman. My coworker informed me that she had a man sitting in her section who was also waiting for his date to show up. There was just a partition dividing these two booths. So we each go up to our respective tables and ask them if it's possible that their date was already there unbeknownst to either of them. My table, the woman, said there's no way and that she would continue waiting. My coworker's table took it upon himself to call his supposed date. He calls her, she answers and moves over to his table, but sadly the man was not happy about this. He berated her somewhat loudly and then just left. The woman sat there crying for a good 10 minutes. I understand why he was upset, but holy shit, that went south really fast. We felt pretty awful for the woman but couldn't help but laugh at how easily this could have all been avoided. But maybe if that's his reaction to something this silly, then she didn't need him anyway. I was a hostess for a few years. Never really had any bad Valentine's disasters except for this one incident. It was a high-end restaurant that was always busy, and Valentine's Day was worse than usual. We took reservations and had a pretty lengthy wait. A middle-aged couple came in with a reservation and were seated at a table for two in the bar area. We had a round table in the entryway of the restaurant where the hostess stand was. The bar was pretty full, so a lot of people on the wait list were hanging in the lobby. I'm not exactly sure what set the couple off or how it started, but the fight escalated away from the table and to the lobby, where the woman physically chased the man around the table over and over again while screaming and calling him cheese dick. My manager and I just stood there shocked and wide-eyed, along with all of the other costumers. She stormed off and left. He hung around and paid the check. Told the manager that she had found cigarettes in his car and accused him of cheating, but he said he had just taken up smoking again. Woman shrugging, light skin tone. When I asked a drunk guy how he wanted his steak cooked, he said, "I like it raw," and licked his lips at me. She left. He fell asleep at the table. It was awkward. Not a waiter, but we were the patrons. My now wife and I were on keto during our first Valentine's Day. We decided that keto candy and brownies would be romantic and still in alignment with our diet. We both politely excused ourselves to the bathroom several times so as to not try to gross each other out. That politeness quickly went away as we both found ourselves running for the bathroom without trying to hide the sweat accumulating on our brows. It was not only our first Valentine's Day, but the first time we spent the night taking turns throwing up / having violent diarrhea in my one-bathroom apartment. I had a couple come in, we were serving endless shrimp. 30 minutes into their dinner they were obviously arguing, the girl is bawling, so I'm trying to give them their space. But this guy kept calling me over to order more shrimp, with his girlfriend crying hysterically next to him. He ordered round after round, while his girlfriend was just crying. Eventually she got up and just left him there, and he stayed another hour or so and just kept ordering. Not a waiter, but I'm a busser at a fine dining restaurant. We close at 10 on weekdays, and this couple comes in at 9:30 and orders the $280 per person 12-course tasting menu. Older guy and very attractive mid-30s woman, they look very wealthy, just a guess. I already know I'm going to be there for a long time, and sure enough midnight rolls around and they are still there, the only ones in the restaurant. They already got their dessert and are not touching it. They were bickering all night and sitting side by side, which was odd, and you could tell by looking at them that things were not going well, and they were very passive-aggressive towards each other. I'm standing close by waiting, and I hear the man start sniffling and putting his head down and see he is crying. She immediately gets her coat and leaves, and this guy sat with his head down staring at his wine glass for the next half hour until my server tells me to just go home. Also, he left a $20 tip on a $640 tab, so don't feel too bad for him. My wife and I went to dinner, and the young couple at the table behind us were visibly off. They weren't really talking much and avoiding eye contact. At the end of their meal they get up and the girl said out loud, "Did I forget anything?" And without missing a beat this dude said, "Yeah, your dignity," and walked off. Made our Valentine's Day amazing. Used to work at a hotel event hall doing catering. We'd hold a Valentine's buffet dinner every year, and it always attracted the senior crowd from a couple of nearby assisted living homes. You'd get a lot of widowed seniors eating with a picture of their loved one, and always one or two breaking down. It was always a bit sad and usually requested it off when I could. Late night at a fast casual chain known for being trashy. Two booths right next to each other, I guess one both got into an argument and she threw her, alcoholic, drink on her man. It hit the lady behind her just trying to enjoy her late night Valentine's dinner with her husband. Not a server, I work for DoorDash. I occasionally get deliveries that are surprises, usually a guy having lunch delivered to his girlfriend at her job. I usually love these and they're my favorite to do, the girl always looks so happy and I sometimes get double tips because the guy will tip on the app and the girl will tip me in person, probably because she's so happy. But this one time. Valentine's Day last year. I love working on Valentine's Day because it's always busy and I get lots of happy couple food deliveries. It was around 1 p.m. and I was delivering food to who I thought was a man at his job, I'll call him Jeff. So I pull up to the job and it's a nursing home. I enter and immediately realize there's something bad going on, someone died, there's people crying everywhere and an ambulance outside, pretty much complete chaos. I go to the front desk and awkwardly say I have a delivery for Jeff. The front desk woman says no, Jeff works there, and then leaves immediately. So I'm running around with my expensive food erratically asking people if they know where Jeff is. Finally I get a hold of the guy on the phone and he's like, "Oh, it's for my girlfriend Katie, thanks for not telling me, dude." I find Katie and she's crying standing next to the dead body. I walk up to her with an awkward smile and tell her I have a Valentine's delivery for her from Jeff. She goes bonkers, saying she's already eaten lunch, why would Jeff not tell her, just basically yelling at me like it's my fault. At this point I've been there around 30 minutes. She says that it was inappropriate for me to walk around the nursing home looking for her, I've done this tons of time with no issues, and staff told me to go find her. She starts yelling more that she's mad at Jeff and I've broken the nursing home rules, etc. etc. I finally managed to get out. Later find out Jeff called and had my $10 tip removed. So I saw a dead body, got yelled at for 15 minutes, wasted almost an hour of work time, all for my shitty $2 delivery fee.